Hi guys, today's video is going to be about grades 1 to 3 and about receiving my first diagnoses. So I'm going to explain, I probably should have explained this more in the last video when I touched on school, but I'll explain it here. So where I live, you go to school from junior kindergarten to grade 12. And in my specific region, which is the same as county in this context, in my region there's no middle school. You attend elementary school from JK to grade 8, and then from grades 9 to 12, you attend high school. And in elementary school, you have the same teacher all day, every day for the entire school year being September to June. So, on that note, let's talk a little bit about grade 1 to 3. There's not a ton to talk about, because they were, from what I can remember, pretty uneventful. And there's a couple reasons for that. So one reason I didn't struggle too much in school in those early grades was that my social emotional development was still pretty much on par with the other children. So I wasn't getting teased. I wasn't acting out. We played in the playground. We went to each other's birthday parties. I was still accepted enough. I don't know if they thought I was weird, but if they did, it wasn't enough to drive them away. So that was one thing. So I was, able to cope in the classroom because I was on the same level as the other kids. The other thing is I had strict teachers, all 3 grades. And while I can be defiant, and you'll hear lots of stuff in later grades, I do have some fear of authority. And these teachers were all very strict. They were women. Men, I'm a lot less likely to try and cross boundaries. Women, it depends on the individual. And with these teachers, they were all quite strict, especially my grade 2 teacher. When I had her, this would have been the 90s. She was in her 50s. She'd been teaching about 30 years at that point. So she would have started somewhere in the 60s, which obviously was a very different environment school-wise. Ask any baby boomer. So she was kind of old-fashioned, and I was a little bit scared of her. By that point, I was diagnosed with ADHD, which I don't think is correct. I'll get to in a minute. But I don't think she cared what letters you gave a child. I think she didn't necessarily believe a lot of it. I remember things like she had an old projector that we would watch films on, and we get a turn to turn the reel. This shows how old-fashioned this person is. This was the 90s I'm talking about here. I remember losing my turn because I had a hard time with the projector, and she accused me of being silly on purpose, and I was not. I was just struggling to use the thing, and I lost my turn. I remember being kept in from recess because my handwriting was sloppy, and she made me rewrite something till it was good enough. And then she made a big production of me not being able to tie my shoes, which I couldn't for a few more years still after that. So those are actually examples of even though my social emotional development was normal, my motor skills were not. I actually remember in grade 1 we had I believe she was a student teacher in the room. I remember her commenting on how I was holding my pencil. So I guess there were little things here and there, but I don't remember major issues. My grade 3 teacher was mean. Even my mom had issues with her and actually went to the school to talk to the principal about the amount of homework this person was assigning. I think she treated us like we were about 15 years old as opposed to 8 years old. I don't know what she expected of us. I remember her sending home a giant package of homework over the Christmas break, and my mom actually saying, "You're not doing that." So the teacher was not a fan of me, I think, because my mom stood up to her. But I was too scared to do much anyway. I just sort of sat there quietly. I remember her threatening to take away a new watch I got because I kept looking at it. That kind of thing. That was her shtick. The only good thing was, for some reason, that teacher loved making us do plays. Everything was do a play. Here's your group, do a play, and I loved it. I liked being center of attention. So that was the best thing about that class. I had no problem standing up there with the other kids and doing a play. Um, yeah, I don't recall there being too much to talk about. Like I said several times now, I do remember in grade 2. This is kind of a cute anecdote. On a spelling test, I couldn't remember how many P's were in the word apple, if it was two or three. So I remember peeking in my desk to look for my spelling sheet. So that's probably the worst of my behavior in those early grades. I don't remember. And I don't actually remember. So on to my first diagnoses were ADHD and OCD. I don't remember. I'd have to ask my mom. I know this video is mostly me saying I don't remember, so I apologize for that. Um, I was referred for assessment and was diagnosed with ADHD. Apparently, I was very chaotic. I had a very hard time sitting still. And I believe today that what we were seeing was some of my impulse control difficulties, some of those executive functioning difficulties that I have with my autism. I think that's what they were seeing and why I was diagnosed with ADHD. And I think the OCD came from, which also I believe to be incorrect. I believe that came from the amount of anxiety I have, which is comorbid with the autism, which is not OCD. And the fact that I'm very particular. I like things just so. I had weird things like I wouldn't play with a toy if a piece was missing from the set. Um, so I think maybe some of that came from that. And I remember planning an organization is actually a strength for me now. But I can remember how messy my desk was in elementary school. It was like impossible for me to keep it organized. Maybe that's where some of that ADHD diagnosis came from. I don't remember too much about being diagnosed. I do know where it took place. I do know which hospital it was at, and I do have a bit of a memory of sitting in a room playing, and I think that was the diagnosis day. But it could have been something else. But that's I probably should have asked my mom for more information before I did this video, but it's not hugely important to the autism narrative anyway. How I was diagnosed. The fact is, I was, and I'm not surprised I was incorrectly diagnosed because I would have been 6 in 1995. Asperger's had only entered the DSM a year earlier. You can watch my "What is Asperger's" video for a better explanation on that. And girls tend to be underdiagnosed as well. So I'm not surprised that I was initially misdiagnosed. Um, and I don't think anything bad necessarily came of it. I think I might have qualified for some EA support. EA stands for Educational Assistant. They work with students with special needs. I do remember in grades 2 and 3 having EAs in our classroom for short periods of time throughout the day. I'm not sure if they were there for me though, or other students, or me and other students. I'm not really sure. And they weren't there enough to be effective anyway. And now they wouldn't even give one for ADHD because of budget cutbacks. So I guess I'm lucky I got something, but yeah, I think it was neither here nor there because the coverage or the hours that I got were so little anyway. So I think that's about it for today. The next video will be more interesting. Stuff started going bad in grades 4 to 6, which is going to be my next video. So yeah, that's going to be it for today. So thank you.